On today's episode of Napchat, we're joined by Julian and Erika Knight again, this time to talk about their experience of whistleblowing, Julian's journey from cockpit to carbon credits via an interview with Emily Maitlis on Newsnight, and how quiet faith can help you get through those times. I hope you enjoy, and thanks again for listening. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Napchat, the podcast for people who put the planet first. I am joined again by Erika and Julian Knight to talk about something rather different from the previous episode. This is to talk about a book that they are writing. I think really I just need to hand over to you guys to talk about it. But what I would say is that this is not... we're not going to go through every single story in the book because, you want people to actually sit back and read it. And we've only got a certain amount of time. So,
it might take a bit longer.
Yeah, that's right. So would you like to explain what the book is and
I think you're best to start off there.
Okay, I'll start off and you can then perhaps, take it further. Look, it's a story of I think my transitionary life from... me being an Air Force pilot, being one of the few to fly with quite an interesting medical condition where all of my organs are sort of flipped through 180, to the work I've done in banking and finance when I left the Air Force, I guess building some of the formative global environmental markets all around the world, and then moving on to another bank where I really thought I was joining a bank that was doing the right thing again. So I joined them to write their policy on water, and lo and behold, about 3 years later, discovered that they were actually not doing the right thing. And it was frankly very shocking. And so I was asked to leave the bank, and eventually I realized the reason that I was asked to leave, and then how that all sort of broke, and taking information I had that was really critical to solving some massive geopolitical problems in terms of terror financing around the world, between Iranian terrorist factions, taking it to America. Going through, I think, 14 years of just the maddest journey as a whistleblower, which promise you isn't a dirty word, although I know it has weird connotations. And then to going back, reaching back to some of the work I did in environmental markets, and my long-term desire to see, the right thing done in terms of building businesses that are sustainable in everything that means, to creating a UK first, and hopefully a huge force for good in the UK economy.
And that's Fairman Knight and Sons.
Yeah, and that's Fairman Knight and Sons, and it's our first and the UK's first commercial scale insect farm down in Lincolnshire. To meeting Erika and the help that you've given me on that journey, and the spiritual assistance that you've offered me.
It does feel like from the conversations we've had, very much a joint project.
I think it's evolved into being a joint project.
It has, but I think it was always destined to be, I think.
Yeah, I think you can look back and see that there were definite moments that you wouldn't have predicted were going to happen, but it was just another kind of bit of guidance from the universe saying, I think you need to go this way, and we just kind of really it worked well.
And you didn't set out to be a whistleblower. You're not really like Citizen
No.
Smith.
I joined the bank. I was hired by the chairman of the bank after I'd run something called Global Cool, which was a large campaign within my hedge fund, within the hedge fund company I work for, to solve global warming, to educate, to try and make a lot of noise in the right way about what was going on with our planet. I joined a bank to write policy on water in a very water-stressed area of the world. So for me, it was a great challenge because I wanted to learn more about the impact of water on dramatic areas of the planet and how they were affecting, normal life. It gave me a chance to look at some of the formative market mechanisms to trade water, which took me back towards carbon credits back in the day. And so as I carried on that journey in the bank, I was sort of pulled into other areas to look at foreign exchange, one of the big areas. And because I had a sort of a 20-year at that point career trading foreign exchange and derivatives, it was, I guess, me being me, it was the natural place they were going to try and find a home for me once I'd done the water project, and then finding a problem, thinking I'd solved the problem because I'd gone through all the issues that I found and put together a really positive solution, presented it to the board of the bank, and then 4 months later was asked to fly back from New York to Singapore and told that my services were no longer required, and I was offered the chance to leave the bank as a good leaver, not realizing what I had in my old briefcase that had collapsed on the way back from one of my business trips.
So they didn't want the solutions. They didn't really even want the problems.
No. They didn't want the problems. They certainly didn't want the solutions. And what we're talking about is dramatic. You're talking about a mechanism that was processing, I think, $250 billion worth of sanctions busting transactions. So that's a hell of a lot of terror being inflicted on the world.
It's incomprehensible.
It's just a dramatic number. And when I started doing the sort of post-mortem after leaving the bank, I mean, I was shell-shocked anyway, but when I started realizing, putting all the pieces together, the jigsaw, what had actually happened, I'd done everything for the right reason, but was being punished because I'd stumbled across one of the largest money laundering schemes the world's ever seen.
And did you have any inkling as you were going through and pulling out the information and researching and putting your story together, I suppose, back then?
Yeah, I mean, because of my role, I was exposed to a lot of the new frontier markets, because whenever we went into a new market as a bank, we were looking for foreign exchange to be the sort of the major check writer. It was going to be the main resource that we were giving to that market and that region. And one of those countries is a beautiful country called Iraq. And I was always a bit concerned that all the meetings I was having there as a bank weren't with necessarily Iraqis. There were a lot of Iranians involved in those meetings. Unfortunately, when I visited one set of meetings, I visited the American government and the State Department in their embassy, and shortly after I'd left, the building came under rocket attack, and the security crew that had checked me in had lost their lives. I guess putting all of that together, I realized that the bank wasn't interested in banking Iraq. It was interested in banking the neighbor and providing all manner of banking services to that country against global sanctions at that point.
And you've already alluded to the fact that whistleblower is a slightly uncomfortable term. Did you fear for what the rest of your life would involve? I don't mean fear as in fear of death, but I mean, do you think actually I'm unemployable now? I can't.
Yeah, it makes huge impacts.
Well, yeah, I mean, I mean, it's no big secret, but I mean, in this day of being able to access information about people, you can very quickly sort of gain a picture of someone that could very plausibly be wrong. I mean, I guess the point about whistleblowing is probably I wouldn't call it whistleblowing. I think it's doing the right thing. Because, you know, as a senior bank employee, I had to do all these courses that would check my credentials almost on a weekly basis for doing the right thing. We were presented with these scenarios. If someone walks into the bank with a luggage case full of unmarked notes, do you accept them, yes or no? And so for me, you know, putting one's hand up and saying there's a money laundering problem here is doing the right thing. It's one of the core skills of a banker to be able to know that there are wrong things to do and there are right things to do.
I don't think it's just the core skills of a banker. It's the core skills of just a good person. It's just being a good person, is knowing when something's right and knowing when something's wrong, and deciding that you're brave enough to say something about it.
And I think, having seen the outline of the book, you go into a lot more detail about. I mean, that's just the outline; it's not written. You go into a lot more detail about your thought process and what led you to that point. So it isn't just as straightforward as sort of saying, well, is this the right or the wrong thing? So there's so much other stuff at play, and when you're messing with Iranians,
and you know, look at what the ramifications of this sort of this sort of funding to that broad sector of terror financing has done to the world. I mean, you know, we don't have to look too long in the rearview mirror to see some shocking examples of what can happen if that funding is allowed to continue over time, and the sheer terror it can bring to bear on nations, great swathes of the world, you know.
But a huge part for you as well, you had to go back into your military days to think, hang on, I've still got friends and family that still serve in the military that are still then potentially at risk. If I don't put my hand up and say something, there's the guilt complex there that if anything were to happen and you hadn't said it, you're kind of torn between these ideas of, is this going to impact my life long term, but also is it going to impact my life in another area long term if I don't say something about it?
I mean, I'd been brought up in a military team that you were educated that terrorism was a bad thing, and then to see its root in what you would perceive to be a nice, you know, correct environment, the world of global banking with the UK's 5th largest bank, I think it's just shocking and it's frightening.
Yes, and I think that's increasingly now in 2025 we are encouraged to think a bit more deeply about, as someone who's not involved in it, to think a bit more deeply about what the ramifications of what's happening at levels above our pay grade could be. But what period of time was this?
This was so I joined the bank in 2008, and by 2011 in November I was allowed to leave the bank as a good leaver
with a broken briefcase.
With a broken briefcase. A CD that I didn't realise I had, and I think it speaks to that path that's sort of mapped out before you, because there's so many things that have to go wrong for you to walk out of a bank with a CD that you don't know you've got, that contains really, really critical information that shows, that puts the full light of day on what was going on. And then to see the bank go through the various investigations they have done and still not admit to it, when it's there in clear
it's
bankers'
like the universe
language.
has dropped these little pipettes of information in somewhere, and you've just been able to follow that trail and pick them up, or unwittingly know that you'd actually got that information, but be able to be in the position to hold on to it and then give it to the audience that needs to hear it in order to be able to show who's right and who's wrong. You've got the evidence there.
You hope it's going to the right person.
Well, you do, and I've been blessed to have, you know, the right people in the right positions, and notably a lawyer who worked for the biggest regulator in America at the time, who was in the right position, who was also a force for good, who also believed he was,
and continues to believe.
and continues to do that, and continues to fight for the right reasons and the right cause. So, I mean, we're coming to the very end game of that 14-year journey, and we hope that the right decisions are made and that justice is served, that can then pour back such wonderful energy into this. I don't think crusade's the right word, but this force for good that we're creating in the UK, and we want to export it from Lincolnshire and the UK around the world as well.
It seems your purpose very much is around doing good things for good people.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
for all people, I suppose.
Yeah.
I think there's been moments where you look into the darkness and think, this is never ending. The pressures that exist for what I've done, but it's having great support through all of that that's kept me going and allowed me to continue striving to get the right people to hear the piece of information they need to hear.
And you are you're allowed to. I mean, are there any restrictions on what you can include in the book, or is it completely unfiltered?
I think we're going to have a discussion with our publishing agent and publisher.
And your legal.
Yeah, no, legal team. I mean, I think that there's been so much of this story in the public domain that it would be difficult to put strange names on us all, because with the power of social media, the people would connect up the dots and figure out who was who, and figure out what the story was about. I think that began in 2015 when my name was first released, albeit it was released by the investigators beforehand for some weird reason. But I think it'd be difficult to try and assume pseudonyms on this one.
Well, yes, we have used your real names in the.
Exactly.
It's kind of difficult.
Yeah, definitely.
Hiding behind an innovative, sustainable farming business.
Yeah,
would be
and
difficult.
You're
as
not
well.
going to phase out my face so no one sees who I am. No, look, I think that's important that the little guy gets the chance to talk like this, and I think hopefully that inspires some strength in other people that are seeing things and thinking, hang on, this just isn't right. And as you say, there is something that's bigger than my pay grade that needs to be spoken about. And if that does give someone the guts to put their hand up and say, I'm not comfortable with this, this isn't cool, then that's
even though you don't necessarily at the time think that you can cope with what the unknowns are after doing that, I think it's just having faith that there are good things. You can go through something that starts off and continues to be quite traumatic, but you can come out the other side okay, and you can have the strength to know that it's worth pursuing if you know it's a good thing.
And I think we've seen with other, not necessarily sort of whistleblowing, but things that have come out into the public eye, which have then had a domino effect on, if you think about people's behaviour in the media and things like that.
Yeah.
That does, one brings two, brings three, and it could lead to that. But it could also lead to people reviewing their practices and saying, well, actually, we don't want to be the subject of whistleblower activity. We are going to make a change. I think that's perhaps a bit idealistic, a bit optimistic, but you never know.
There's hope that could actually be the thought process that some people carry out. Yeah.
And also, this sort of activity made a particular institution a lot of money, and there was a lot of profiteering from sheer violence, and that, I think, that's something that in our world one would have thought that's pretty easy to fix. But and I think if it shines a light on some of these chains that sit beneath we wouldn't expect to understand how the world's global foreign exchange system trades and clears and settles and all of these things. But if that makes us think a little bit more about what is going on when I change my sterling for dollars and things like that, then I think that's a good thing.
I think it's something that is so deeply embedded within political systems and financial systems and industry and everything
Yeah.
like that. It's
Yeah.
I suppose it's you just do what you can to make a difference in the way that you,
Absolutely.
that you
and
can.
and also make enough noise about it so that the layperson who doesn't necessarily have any interest in finance or in the geopolitical scheme of things actually inquires and wants to know more about it. And then people have to be a bit more transparent about
Yeah.
things, and it may make it that, you know, again, not wanting to think that it's too idealistic, but that people will make real changes that makes them have to become more transparent because people are more interested because they've taken a bit of notice of something like this or something maybe that they've seen in the news, and they feel that they can pursue it and get real answers.
Yeah, which is, you know, the more people do that, you said you would love this to lead to other people to have some confidence to
Absolutely.
be a whistleblower of one
Yeah,
description or
yeah.
another. And that I think that's a really great aspiration.
And I don't think it's a good status quo to have, you know, such an a banking institution overtly having blood on its hands
No.
in this way. And then you think back, we talked about the military. You think back to friends that I lost, you know, comrades of you know, that served, that we all served together, you know, that lost their lives. There's a, you know, what we found drew a very direct line between a bank and funding of large swathes of Islamic terror.
It's sad. It's needless, isn't it? It's pretty sad. I mean, you can't change the past, but you can
No.
have an influence on the future.
Exactly.
And you during this period 14 years ago, you weren't together then, were you?
No,
you got together since then.
predates
We
me.
came together about 8 years ago, 7-8 years ago, and you know, we, I think, have come through some of the tougher moments of
Yeah.
the case. You know, where you know, I was accused of being an outright liar. I was interviewed by U.S. authorities, and they accused me of making it all up. And then, you know, latterly, as a team together, we presented the information, new information that we subsequently found that was sitting under all of our old data, that really, you know, says so plainly, it's there. Look at the names, look at the dates, look at what's happened, and please, you know, believe it.
And when you're sitting in an interview situation with, you know, the US authorities, are you, without meaning to over dramatise things, are you sort of thinking, I might not get out of here, or what's going to
Well,
happen?
you know, it's a sort of interview where your phone is taken away from you before you go in. I was in for 7 hours. There were a number of special agents questioning me, and at points, questions became interrogation almost, you know, where I was, you know, answers were demanded of me. And it was tough. I think I lost my voice at the end of it. I just run out of voice because, you know, I had, I think, about 50 people questioning me, and I was sitting next to my lawyer, who ironically was the only person allowed to keep his phone in the room. But it was really tough.
I'm guessing they didn't provide you with nice hot drinks to keep
No,
your voice.
no. I was lucky if I got a cup of water.
And how's it's interesting that something I've learned from reading the outline of the book is that you have this faith that that I didn't know about, and that sort of kept you going through that. And I think that the more I think about conversations we've had, and the more I've read about you, it becomes apparent that there is something deeper within you, and I think that that's something that you two share, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's something that you've always had within you, but then maybe had to kind of put it to one side a bit to be on that pragmatic trip that you were on. But I think because it's something that I've always had, and when I say quiet faith, I mean just this knowing that everything happens for a reason, and if you're being told in your head that, oh, this is a good idea, then go with that, because that's whoever it is, the universe, whoever you want to say it is, it's talking to you, and it's guiding you on your path, and it's this quiet knowledge that everything happens for a reason. And even if it's something that seems bad at the time, like the many horrific situations we've been in, there's a reason for it. And if you don't even know the reason for that now, it'll become apparent in the future. And it's just having that sitting quietly within you to know that just keep going. I'm obviously on the right path. There might be little signs that tell me that I'm on the right path, but it's just that security in knowing that you're doing the right thing, and to sit with it and continue, because as long as you've got that feeling that everything's happening for that reason, then to go with it, and you'll be one way or another rewarded in the end, whether it's with answers or whatever it is that you're wishing to pursue.
And it helps to have someone verbalize that, because you feel it within you. You feel you are doing the right thing. Like, you know, taking the information to the American regulators from Germany, as it was, to sitting in front of them, to explaining what had happened, to answering all the barrage of questions, to then sitting and answering more questions, to keep on keeping on. Often you don't know why you're on the path, but understanding that path is almost predestined. It might take different turns, that's fine, but it's there for you. And so not fighting that, not being hostile to that, not trying to force things, just being very quiet and letting it unfold as it has done has given me a lot of support over those number of years. Then of course reflecting on my life before and after as well, because I see it very clearly in you know, the work I'm doing now.
And you know, there are lots of sort of things where I think about, you know, what's the most nerve-wracking moment, but perhaps you don't have those necessarily if you're not, and it's difficult to, I think, to express this idea of that sort of quiet faith of things, that so it doesn't come across as an arrogance of, well, it'll be fine.
Well, that's it. I think there is that fine line, isn't it? Because you are always going to have those day-to-day things, the pressures of whether it's financial pressures or time pressures. So there is going to be some element of pressure. But I think instead of letting that completely subsume you, you have to just rise above it a little bit and think, okay, then I'm doing everything I physically can to do the right thing, to continue with my work, to do what I'm ever trying to pursue, but not to be completely under the pressure that you lose all of the vision of the future because you're so subsumed by those 5 minutes, those hours, those couple of days. It's to see through that and give yourself that faith just to get through those next few hours or through the next few days. And, you know, the path will illuminate itself to you, I guess. But it's, like you say, not wanting to be arrogant about it, but just keeping yourself going with that positivity.
I suppose that does come into the sort of the business world as well, doesn't it? That confidence
Without
that actually this idea is right.
Especially being entrepreneurial, because if you were to take the first few setbacks as personal or as that's it, there's no point pursuing this, you wouldn't go anywhere. That, you know, you'd literally falter at the first hurdle. It's having that faith and that determination that you will make it work, you will go that bit further, and you will continue to strive on and not let things totally take over or destroy your positivity altogether, because otherwise you would just give up and there'd be nothing to strive for.
No, and we haven't given up, and we're not giving up, and we're moving forward, and I'm utterly convinced, more than I ever have been, that we are on the right path, doing the right thing at the right time, and we'll create a wonderful future as well.
And I think it's all about not just us educating our children, because between us we have quite a few children, but it's making sure that they have that little bit of positivity, that, you know, even if it's like sports day yesterday and they didn't come first, it's like, but you were trying, and if you really want to come first, if that's really important to you, then you'll put the effort into trying to come first next time. And it's whether it's putting it into something small like that, or whether it's putting it into making the business work, it's that where your focus goes, so will the energy. And if you want something to work, you focus on it, make it work, and it's all within your capabilities.
That's interesting. I mean, yeah, if I think back to 25 years ago when I first met you, Erika, that you had a very different, and to me as a sort of 19-year-old university student, a very unusual positivity that, you know, I hadn't come across before, you know, and I think, you know, now it's not a surprise that you two are together.
I think it's one of those things that's kind of innate in you. I mean, my mum is a great sponsor of it as well, so I have that in a day-to-day reinforcement from my mum. But I think losing my dad, my dad was an incredibly positive, incredibly athletic person. He was training to do the Lanzarote Ironman, fittest guy you knew. Then he found a mole on his leg and he was just, I'll get it sorted. And it turned out that within basically 6 months of that, he thought he was just having a mole removed. Then it was full cancer. He'd got cancer riddled throughout him. And just in the 4 weeks that he was bedridden from having an operation, he died. And to me, it was that whole, oh my goodness, I've been Mrs. Positive. I've been saying, Dad, you'll be fine. But I think when you have to look beyond it and you have to think, well, that happened for a reason. And that was the best way for Dad, because being the physical fit chap that he was, had it have been a long drawn out process, it might have been more easy for us because it wasn't such a quick thing. But you have to take the positivity from that and think that was the way it was meant to be for him. So I think all of the life lessons I've been through, I try and take a little bit out of everything I learn, and if I can see that somebody else needs to know that little bit of information, I'll pass it on to them. And if it helps, if they're willing to take it on, or if it helps, then, I don't go, oh, that was because of me. I just think, oh, I'm really pleased that I could have helped somebody. So whether it's been Jules or whether it's children or with anybody I come across, if I can do that, and probably how I was 25 years ago, if I can see that something I might say or do could help somebody, whether it's advice, whether it's just being there, I think that's just the way I've always been, basically.
I think on reflection, you were, and I've thought about this in the last few months, that you were ahead of your time, essentially, because that's what people aspire to now.
Yeah, I guess you see a lot of things, and when you've got all of the social media things and the Instagram things with your little quotes for the day popping up, I guess I was just trying to be that little quote of the day back then, And
I think it takes that sort of, you could quite easily have said to Julian, no, don't release this story. There are uncomfortable things in there that I don't want to be rehashed. I don't want people to know about it.
But then I think if you do that, you're denying other people learning from that.
Exactly,
and I think although that might be a bit of like scratching a scab off and going, oh, that's sore for a minute, it'll heal, it's fine. But if it can help somebody else in the long term or more people, then it's more than worth it.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I think there's so much in there that I think everybody can learn
we've
from.
not even.
Yeah, I think it encompasses many elements of life. Even if you think, oh, I like the financial idea of that, you'll be gripped. But if that's not something that interests you, but just a good old story that you did think, oh, this is like more extravagant than a scene from EastEnders. That's also in it as well. Definitely.
Maybe we should have had the EastEnders, like the Dum-Dums on the previous episode, leaving it like a
leaving it up right on the edge.
One of those.
And so, are you happy to share the working title of the book?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a working title which is From Cockpit to Carbon Credits, but I think obviously there's a lot in between. So that may need to evolve over time. It may need to have more of a more of an emphasis on what the journey in the middle was all about. But I mean, if you define it at the beginning and at the end, well, that was what I did to start with, and what I'm doing now is hopefully creating a load of good in the form of carbon sinks around Lincolnshire.
And in the middle of it, you were on Newsnight, and
In the middle of it, I had a very interesting interview with Emily Maitlis on BBC Newsnight before the Live Earth concerts. Yeah.
And you involved? Was it the week before in the Diana concert?
I worked with the two princes, Prince William, Prince Harry, on putting that concert together and making sure that that its environmental footprint was as de minimis as possible. And so that was wonderful working with the office at Clarence House back then, and I worked prior to that with our future king at that point, Prince Charles, on Global Cool and its various incarnations around the world, in India and in America.
It's incredible. There's a lot. There's a lot going on. You're just so relaxed about it. I'm just on all
yeah, well, it's just, I guess we just try and let it wash over us. But I think I'm very lucky to have had you carefully parachuted into my life when it happened, and to give me the guidance. I'd say that's one of the most standout things out of all of this is meeting Erika from it all.
Even though it brought more children into the equation, that's more worry.
More children, more dogs, more cats.
You've got a whole
fish.
football team now, though.
Well, we have.
I tell you, to leave the house without one of the 5 children or 5 dogs making a mark on your clothing is an accomplishment. And if you can start the day like that, then it's going well.
Don't show them the back of your
I only have 2 and 1 dog, so it's difficult.
Oh, Alex.
Okay, that's brilliant. So I think we'll leave it at that, because when your book becomes a reality, then I think there's going to be absolute clamour of people kind of wanting to get in it, from the kind of the anti-establishment people to maybe a bit of conspiracy theorists in there as well. But then also people who just want a ruddy good read and to learn. And I think that increasingly people are looking around for people who, share elements of their life and like, well, actually, they've done that.
Yeah,
so
and
perhaps
it resonates with people sometimes, and it makes, it's just something that gives a bit of light in the world sometimes, doesn't it?
Very exciting.
It is very exciting.
Alongside just, a few insects and...
I mean...
a massive business there.
Notwithstanding the insects and all the good that they can do.
It's brilliant. Thank you so much.
No,
both
thank
of
you.
for coming in.
Thank
It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah.
Absolute pleasure for us too. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.